Have you ever wondered how people in the 14th century managed to tie, lift, and haul the countless loads that filled their daily lives? How did ships spread their sails? How did builders raise their stones? And how did farmers bind their bundles? The answer lies in the work of the rope maker, a quiet yet vital trade that gave strength to wood, cloth, and human effort alike. Before we drift into tonight's story, make sure to subscribe so you'll never miss a gentle journey through history. What was rope to the 14th century world? It was not just a tool, but a lifeline. Without rope, ships could not sail, bridges could not be built, wells could not draw water, and carts could not secure their loads. Did villagers make it themselves? At home? In small pieces, perhaps, for tying simple bundles. But for strong, reliable lengths, they turned to the rope maker, whose craft turned rough fibers into strands that held fast against strain. What materials did he use? Hemp was the most common, though flax and other strong fibers served as well. Did these plants grow nearby? Often, yes, in fields where stalks were harvested, soaked, and beaten until tough strands could be drawn from them. Were these strands ready at once? Not immediately. They had to be combed and straightened, worked until they lay smooth in long, even lines. Only then could the rope maker begin his true craft. How did he twist the rope? Not by hand alone, for the work required long space and careful rhythm. Rope walks, narrow, straight paths, sometimes stretching the length of a field, gave him the room he needed. Along this path, hooks or spindles held the strands, and with steady turning, the fibers twisted together. Did it happen quickly? No, for the longer the rope, the more patient the work. Step by step, the rope maker walked, backward, twisting as he went until dozens of feet of rope lay complete behind him. Why twist in such a way? Because one strand alone broke easily, but when several were twisted together, their strength grew greater than their parts. Was this secret simple? To us, perhaps, but to the 14th century villager, it was skill hard-earned. A poorly twisted rope could fray or snap, and such a failure might cost lives at sea or destroy goods on land. Did the rope maker know this? He did, and so he worked with care, fingers rough but precise, always mindful that strength came from patience. What did the finished ropes serve? Everything. Builders used them to lift stones into place. Farmers bound hay and secured wagons. And villagers used shorter pieces for daily chores. But nowhere was rope more important than at sea. Ships demanded miles of it, to raise sails, to drop anchors, to tie down cargo, to guide the rudder. Could a ship sail without rope? Never. The rope maker's work stretched across every plank, every mast, every knot upon the vessel. How did villagers view him? With quiet respect. He did not hold the standing of a noble, nor the bustle of a merchant, but they knew that his ropes were everywhere, binding their lives together. Did they trust his work? They had to, for one snapped rope might mean a shattered cart, a failed bridge, or a drifting ship. Was his trade celebrated? Rarely. But was it indispensable? Always. So what was the life of a rope maker in the 14th century? It was a life of long walks, twisting strands into strength, of dust and fiber clinging to his clothes, of patience and rhythm learned from years of labor. It was a life not marked by grandeur, but by necessity, for without his ropes, the world, of wood, stone, and sail, could not hold together. And though he worked quietly, every knot tied by farmer, builder, or sailor carried the unseen mark of his hands. Have you ever wondered why rope makers needed such long, straight paths to practice their trade? Could rope not be made in a small workshop like a blacksmith's forge or a weaver's room? The answer is that the rope itself demanded space, for its strength came from length and careful twisting, and without distance the fibers could not be properly laid. What was a rope walk? It was a narrow strip of ground, sometimes the length of a field, where the rope maker walked steadily backward, twisting and guiding the strands. Was it always outdoors? Not always. In larger towns, long sheds sheltered the rope walk from rain and wind, but in many villages the open air sufficed. Did the rope maker mind the weather? He had little choice. Sun or cloud, breeze or stillness. The rope had to be made. Why so long? Because a rope could not be made strong in short pieces alone. The longer the rope walk, the longer the rope that could be twisted without knots or joins. Were shorter ropes useless? Not at all, for villagers often needed simple cords for binding or carrying. But for ships, bridges, and wells, only long, continuous ropes would endure. Did this length require patience? Always. Each step backward was a careful measure, each twist an act of steady rhythm. What tools filled the rope walk? Simple frames of wood with hooks or spindles held the fibers at one end. At the other, a turning wheel or hand crank twisted them together. Did the rope maker work alone? Sometimes, but often apprentices helped, holding fibers taut, guiding strands so they did not tangle. Was it quick work? Rarely. To walk the length of a rope walk once was only the beginning, for the strands had to be tightened, combined, and often walked again. What did this place look like to passers-by? From a distance, they might see the rope maker moving slowly backward, arms working the strands, his figure shrinking as he reached the far end. To them, it looked like little more than walking. But was it simple walking? Not at all. Each pace was guided by knowledge. Each turn of the hand determined the rope's strength. The rope walk was both workshop and classroom, a place where patience stretched as far as the fibers themselves. Did the rope walk hold a rhythm of its own? Yes, a rhythm of steps, twists, and creaks. The rope maker's boots pressed dust into the ground. His hands rolled fibers into cords. His tools clicked as hooks turned. Could one mistake ruin the work? It could, for a loose twist or uneven pull weakened the rope. Did he begin again when this happened? Sometimes with a sigh, knowing that wasted fiber was wasted coin, but more often skill prevented such errors. So what was the rope walk in truth? It was the stage of the rope maker's craft, the narrow, patient path, where fibers became strands and strands became rope. It was a place where hours stretched quietly, where progress was measured not in noise or sparks, but in the slow growth of strength laid out across the ground. And though it seemed humble, every ship's sail, every builder's pulley, every farmer's cart depended on that long, dusty walk where patience and labor joined to give the world its cords. Have you ever wondered what rope was really made of in the 14th century? What gave those twisting cords the power to hold heavy sails, raise stones, and bind wagons securely? The answer lies not in iron or wood, but in humble plants, hemp, flax, and other fibrous stalks pulled from the soil, worked with patience until they became threads strong enough to carry the weight of the world. Where did these fibers come from? Farmers grew hemp and flax in their fields, tending them much. Like any other crop, were they planted for food? No, but for their long, tough stalks, which held the strands rope makers valued. Did they look impressive? Not particularly. Hemp rose tall with rough stems, while flax bore slender stalks and small flowers. To most eyes, they were ordinary plants, but to rope makers, they were the very foundation of their craft. How were the stalks prepared? First, they were harvested and laid in water or on damp ground to soften, a process that loosened the fibers within. Was this easy? No, it required time and careful judgment. Leave the stalks too short a time, and the fibers clung stubbornly. Too long, and they weakened or rotted. Did the rope maker himself do this work? Sometimes, though often farmers or laborers prepared the bundles before sewing them on. What came next? The stalks had to be broken apart, beaten, and combed until the inner fibers separated. Was this gentle work? Hardly. Wooden mallets and iron-toothed combs were used to strike and draw the strands, freeing them from the woody shell. Did dust rise in the air? Yes, thick and choking, clinging to clothes and skin. Yet slowly, from this rough labor, smooth, golden, fibers emerged, long and flexible, ready to be twisted into rope. Were all fibers the same? Not at all. Some were coarse and better for heavy, thick ropes used on ships or in lifting stone. Others were finer, suited for smaller cords used around homes and farms. Did the rope maker know the difference? Instantly. His hands told him what his eyes sometimes could not, guiding him to match the right fibers to the task. Did villagers ever see this part of the process? Rarely, for by the time they visited the rope walk, the fibers were already clean and ready. To them, rope seemed almost to appear by magic. But the rope maker knew better. Every strong length began in the soil, tended in fields, soaked, beaten, and combed until the strands lay in neat bundles, waiting for his skill. So what did these humble plants give the world? They gave it strength. Without hemp and flax, the builder could not lift, the farmer could not bind, and the sailor could not sail. They were ordinary to look at, but extraordinary in purpose. And, in the careful hands of the rope maker, they were transformed from rough stalks into the cords that bound the 14th century world together. If you're enjoying this quiet stroll through history, don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful stories like this. Have you ever thought about how many tasks in the 14th century depended on rope? Could ships sail? Could builders raise stone? Or could farmers bind their harvest without it? The answer is no. Rope was everywhere, woven into the fabric of daily life in ways so constant that people hardly noticed it, yet they would have been helpless without it. Where was rope most visible? On ships. A vessel without ropes was little more than wood drifting helplessly. Did ropes truly matter that much? Absolutely. They hauled sails into place, raised anchors from the seabed, tied cargo securely, and steadied the very masts that carried the ship forward. Could a sailor's hands ever rest from rope? Rarely. His days were filled with knots, coils, and pulls, each one a test of the rope maker's craft. What about in villages far from the sea? Ropes still held their place. Farmers bound haystacks and tied livestock, secured carts for journeys, and lifted heavy loads with simple pulleys. Did builders use rope as well? Constantly. Stones for walls or bridges were hoisted by ropes wound around wooden frames, each length trusted to carry weight heavier than any man could lift alone. A snapping rope could mean ruin, so only the strongest cords were chosen. Were ropes used in markets? Yes, in countless ways. Merchants tied bundles of cloth, sacks of grain, or barrels of goods, knowing that safe travel depended on secure knots. Even the stalls themselves, with their cloth coverings and wooden posts, were fastened with rope. Did villagers notice this? Perhaps only in passing. But without rope, the market square would have been a chaos of tumbling goods and broken carts. And what of the household? Was rope found there too? Certainly. Short cords tied doors and shutters, hung tools on walls, or carried buckets from wells. Did children use it? Of course, for simple games, skipping, or pulling toys fashioned from wood. Even in the smallest cottages, rope served quietly, a constant companion to daily living. So what did rope mean to the 14th century world? It meant reliability. It meant strength without steel, flexibility without breaking. It meant that ships reached their ports, carts reached their markets, and families pulled water from the earth. Rope was not a luxury nor even a craft admired for beauty. It was the unseen thread that bound together work, travel, and survival. And at the center of all this stood the rope maker, whose twisting hands and patient walks produced the cords that tied a village to its fields, its markets, and even its ships. Without his ropes, the world would have loosened, slipped, and fallen. Apart, with them it held firm, steady as the knots he tied. Have you ever wondered what a rope maker's day truly looked like in the 14th century? Was it filled with steady, rhythmic labor from dawn to dusk, or did it shift with the seasons and the demands of the village? The answer is that his work followed a pattern both repetitive and essential, a rhythm of tasks that made each day blend into the next while still shaping the lives of everyone around him. When did his day begin? Early, before the village stirred fully. Why so soon? Because rope demanded time and daylight was precious. The rope maker stepped onto his rope walk or into his workshop while the mist still clung to the fields, hands already roughened by years of fiber and dust. Did he leap to twisting rope at once? No. First he inspected his materials, bundles of hemp or flax waiting to be combed, checked, and straightened. Without good fibers, no rope would last. What came next? Preparation. He combed and aligned the strands, smoothing them into long, neat bundles. Was this light work? Never. The fibers resisted, clinging stubbornly until his arms grew weary. Yet each stroke of the comb mattered, for any weakness in the beginning became weakness in the final rope. Did he pause often? Rarely. The morning hours demanded focus. When the fibers were ready, he turned to twisting. Did he work alone? Sometimes, but more often with an apprentice at his side. One held the bundles taut, the other guided them into place, and slowly the rope lengthened along the rope walk. Was it quick? No, it required patience. Step by step, they walked backward, twisting and tightening until the rope took its final form. Did they speak as they worked? Sometimes in short words, but mostly they let the rhythm carry them, boots pressing dust, hands shaping strength. Did his work end with twisting? Not at all. Finished ropes had to be coiled, measured, and stored. Shorter cords were bundled for households, thicker ropes for builders, long lengths for ships. Did he deliver them? Often carrying coils across the village or loading them onto carts bound for markets. Each delivery tied his labor directly to the lives of others, from farmers binding hay to sailors setting sail. And when evening came, was his work done? Not entirely. Repairs to tools waited, spindles to fix, combs to mend, wheels to oil. Dust clung to his clothes, fibers to his hair, but he brushed them away only when the day's tasks were complete. Did he ever rest? Yes, but only when the last coil was tied and the last order finished. His rest was not indulgence, but necessity, for the morning would bring the same rhythm again. So what was the rope maker's daily life? It was steady, repetitive, and demanding, yet also vital. Each day he combed, twisted, and coiled, producing the silent strength that held the village together. Was it a life of glory? No. But was it? A life of meaning? Absolutely. For every knot tied by sailor, builder, or farmer carried within it the quiet labor of the rope maker's hands, repeated day after day in a rhythm as sure as the turning of the seasons. Have you ever wondered how the rope maker was truly seen by those around him? Was he admired for his skill or taken for granted as just another tradesman? The truth is that his reputation rested somewhere between respect and quiet distance. For while everyone needed his ropes, few truly understood the patience and effort behind them. Why was he respected? Because his work touched every household. Farmers relied on his cords to bind their harvest. Builders trusted his ropes to lift stones, and sailors would not leave shore without coils ready at hand. Did villagers know this? Of course. They saw his ropes in use everywhere, and that alone earned him a measure of honor. Could the village function without him? Not for long. His trade was as essential as the smith's hammer or the miller's stones. Yet why was he sometimes kept at arm's length? Perhaps because his work seemed mysterious. Villagers saw the combed fibers and the finished coils, but few witnessed the long hours of twisting along the rope walk. Did this distance create suspicion? Little. Some wondered if he charged too much for his cords, or if he saved the strongest ropes for merchants rather than neighbors. Was this fair? Not always. But like many craftsmen whose trade was specialized, the rope maker lived with a mixture of trust and doubt. Did he have close ties with other tradesmen? Yes. The carpenter often needed ropes for scaffolding, the mason for hoisting stone, the cooper for binding barrels. These bonds gave him a firm place among the craftsmen of the village. Was he part of their gatherings? At times, though his dusty, fibrous work set him apart. Still, when projects rose, a bridge to build, a house to raise, his ropes were as necessary as any tool. How did villagers greet him in daily life? With nods, perhaps, or brief words when he passed by. Did children watch his rope walk with curiosity? Often, for the long twisting of strands looked almost magical to their eyes. To them, his work seemed both strange and fascinating, though to him it was simply routine. So what was the rope maker's place in the village? It was one of quiet importance. He was not the most celebrated figure, nor the most gossiped about, but he was essential. His work was trusted even when his person was half forgotten. And though he might not have sought the center of attention, the village revolved around the unseen strength of his cords, binding their lives together more tightly than they ever realized. Have you ever thought about the risks that lay hidden in the rope maker's steady craft? At first glance, his trade might seem safe compared to the smith's fiery forge or the mason's towering scaffolds. But was rope making without danger? Not at all. Beneath its rhythm lay perils that could wound the careless and weaken even the strongest body over years of toil. What was the greatest risk? The fibers themselves. Hemp and flax, when beaten and combed, released clouds of dust that clung to the air. Did this trouble the rope maker? Constantly. It filled his lungs, dried his throat, and left him coughing after long days on the rope walk. Could it be avoided? Hardly. Dust was part of his world, settling on his clothes, his hair, and his breath alike. Were there dangers in the twisting of rope? Yes. Fibers stretched taut could snap under strain, lashing back with enough force to cut skin or bruise muscle. Did apprentices learn this the hard way? Often. A rope that appeared sound might fray unseen, and when it broke, it punished anyone standing too close. This was why the rope maker taught caution above all. Never trust a strand until it had proven its strength. What about the tools? Hooks, wheels, and cranks carried their own risks. Fingers caught where wood and iron turned together could be crushed or broken in an instant. Did accidents happen? They did, especially to the inexperienced. A moment's distraction while walking backward could mean stumbling into the very machinery that gave rope its form. Was the work itself hard on the body? Always. Carrying bundles of fiber bent the back, twisting strands strained the shoulders, and endless walking along the rope walk wore down legs and feet. Did the rope maker rest often? No. The trade demanded endurance, and his body bore the price in calloused hands, aching joints, and tired eyes red from dust. So how did he endure? With patience, habit, and caution. He knew the risks, and he trained himself and his helpers to move carefully, to treat every strand with respect, to keep tools in good repair. Did this remove danger entirely? Never. But it lessened it, allowing him to continue year after year, bound by necessity as tightly as his own ropes bound the world around him. So what did danger mean in the rope maker's trade? It was not the sudden violence of battle or storm, but the quiet, persistent risks of dust, strain, and sharp fibers. It meant that his work, though steady, demanded as much courage as any other, and though his dangers were less visible than those of soldiers or sailors, they were no less real. A reminder that every trade, no matter how ordinary it seemed, carried its own hidden trials. Have you ever wondered what gave a ship its strength in the 14th century? Was it only the wood of its hull or the canvas of its sails? The answer is that ropes held everything together, unseen, unglamorous, but utterly essential. Without ropes, the sea's winds could not be caught, the anchors could not be raised, and the cargo could not be secured. For sailors, rope was not merely a tool, it was survival itself. What did ropes do for the sails? They controlled every sheet of canvas. With ropes, sailors hauled sails up the masts, let them down in sudden storms, and shifted them to catch the changing winds. Could a ship sail without these lines? Impossible. Each rope was like a muscle of the vessel, pulling, loosening, and holding in harmony with the others. The rope maker's patient twisting on land became the very motion that carried ships across oceans. What about the anchor? Was it lowered and raised by strength alone? No, ropes bore its weight, guiding it down to the seabed and hauling it back again. Imagine the strain, heavy iron dragging through water, resisted only by the cords woven from hemp and flax. Did sailors trust these ropes? They had to. One snapped line might mean drifting helplessly, a ship lost to wind and current. Where? Ropes also part of safety? Yes. When storms battered the decks, sailors tied themselves with short ropes to keep from being washed overboard. When cargo shifted, ropes bound barrels and crates tightly, keeping them from crashing across the deck. Did these uses matter? More than any could count. Rope was not only about movement, but about protection, holding life and goods firmly against the sea's fury. Did sailors respect the rope maker? They might not have known his name, but they knew his craft. Each coil carried aboard was examined, tested, and trusted. A weak rope meant risk, but a strong one meant confidence. Did sailors test ropes often? Always, for their lives depended on it. And though they rarely saw the long rope walks or dusty workshops where the cords were born, they carried the rope maker's labor with them into every voyage. So what did rope mean at sea? It meant connection between mast and sail, between ship and anchor, between sailor and safety. It was as vital as wood, as precious as water, as constant as the wind itself. And though the rope maker worked far, from the waves his cords became the lifelines of sailors, stretched taut against the power of the ocean. Let's pause for just a moment, and if you haven't already, subscribe to join us for more calm stories. Have you ever wondered how far a rope traveled once it left the rope maker's hands? Was it bound only for the farmer's field or the sailor's deck? Or did it reach farther, into markets and towns where trade carried it beyond the village? The answer is that ropes, though humble in appearance, became part of the great flow of goods that linked countryside to city, village to harbor, and people to people. Where did his ropes go first? To neighbors, of course. Farmers needed them to tie hay, bind carts, and tether animals. Builders ordered thick cords for lifting stone, while households bought shorter lengths for simple tasks. Did this small trade keep him busy? Certainly, for every villager found use for rope. But his work did not end at the village boundary. What about merchants? They came seeking strong coils to carry on their journeys. Did they value the rope makers' skill? Greatly, for their carts, pack animals, and market stalls all relied on rope. A weak cord could spill goods, ruin wares, or lose profit. Strong rope, however, gave them safety on the long roads between towns. Was his trade carried by word of mouth? Often, yes. A merchant who trusted a rope maker would return again, spreading his reputation across regions. How did towns depend on his work? In towns, bakers, coopers, and craftsmen tied their stores, bound barrels, and secured carts. Did ships in distant harbors need his ropes? Yes, though he might never see them. Merchants brought his coils to ports, where sailors judged their worth, and carried them aboard. Could his rope travel farther than he ever did? Indeed, while the rope maker walked only his rope walk, his craft reached rivers, seas, and markets far away. Did money matter in this trade? It did, for merchants often. Paid in coin rather than grain. Was this important? Very much so, for coins allowed him to buy new tools, oil for wheels, or even finer fibers for stronger cords. In this way, his work tied him not only to his village but also to the broader economy, linking his dusty rope walk to the flow of markets. So what was the rope maker's place in trade? He was both local and far-reaching. His neighbors relied on him daily, but merchants carried his work outward, tying his small village to the pulse of distant towns and ships. And though he seldom left his rope walk, his cords traveled farther than his own feet, binding the world together in ways he might never fully see. Have you ever wondered why some trades fade from memory while others linger in the quiet corners of history? Why do we still picture the rope maker walking steadily backward along his rope walk, twisting strands into strength? The answer is that his craft was not a passing skill, but a foundation of life, one that tied together the work of farmers, builders, sailors, and merchants alike. What did his labor truly give the world? It gave connection. A cart bound for market rolled safely, because his ropes held its load. A bridge rose above a river, because his cords lifted stone into place. A ship caught the wind and crossed the waves because his coils tightened sails and held anchors fast. Without his ropes, much of the 14th century's work would have faltered. Did people always notice this? Rarely, but the quiet truth remained. Every knot tied was an echo of his patience. Did his trade change the way villages functioned? Yes, it gave them reliability. Farmers no longer feared their haystacks spilling apart. Builders trusted their scaffolds. Merchants traveled more securely. Even households benefited, hanging buckets, fastening doors, or tying tools with his cords. Was his work visible everywhere? Not in the man himself, but in the uses of his rope, woven silently into daily life. Was the rope maker himself remembered with fame? Not often. His name seldom entered records, and few songs praised his steady labor. Yet, does that lessen his importance? Not at all. History often remembers kings, wars, and discoveries, but behind them stand craftsmen whose work gave strength to those. Stories, the rope maker's dust-covered trade was one of them. And what remains now? Some old rope walks still stretch across the land, long and straight, where footsteps once measured patience. In museums or villages, ancient coils of rope remind us of the endurance of hemp and flax, twisted by hands long gone. Do these remnants not speak quietly of his craft? They do, whispering of men who worked without glory, yet whose cords bound together the fabric of their world. So what is the rope maker's legacy? It is strength, not loud or shining, but steady. It is the reminder that survival depends as much on humble patience as on grand design. His ropes held ships, markets, farms, and families together, and in doing so, they held history itself. And though his face is forgotten, the sound of his rope twisting, the feel of his fibers turning, and the strength of his knots live on in the unseen ties that have always bound human life.